The baby whimpered again, and something inside Clara shifted. Without thinking, she reached out her arms. The cowboy hesitated only a second before placing the tiny bundle against her chest. The baby was lighter than she expected, almost frighteningly so, his cries thin and tired, like he had already used up too much strength. Clara's breath caught as warmth spread through her body, a deep, aching warmth she hadn't felt since childhood. She adjusted her shawl clumsily, afraid of doing something wrong, afraid of hope itself. "I don't know how," she whispered, almost apologetically, her voice shaking as she looked up at the cowboy. His eyes were red, rimmed with exhaustion and grief, but he nodded like it didn't matter. "Just hold him," he said. "That's more than he's had." Clara lowered herself onto the chair by the fire, cradling the baby closer. His tiny fingers curled around the edge of her dress, gripping it like a lifeline. The crying softened, then slowed, until it became small hiccuping breaths. Outside, the wind rattled the loose boards of the shack, but inside, everything felt still. Clara stared down at the child, noticing the faint fuzz of hair on his head, the way his lips trembled even in sleep. Her chest tightened with a pain that felt like loss and love tangled together. People in town had always looked at her with pity or ridicule, whispering that no man would want her, that she'd never have a family of her own. She had believed them, built walls around her heart so thick even she forgot they were there. But now, with this fragile life pressed against her, those walls cracked. The cowboy stood awkwardly near the door, hat clutched in his hands. "Mary said you were gentle," he murmured. "Said you saw people when others didn't." Clara swallowed hard. She remembered Mary's laugh, how she'd squeezed Clara's hand once and said, "You've got the softest heart in this whole town." Clara had laughed it off then. Now, tears slid down her cheeks without her noticing. The baby stirred again, making a small sound, and Clara instinctively rocked him. Her body moved before her mind could catch up, as if some ancient memory had awakened inside her. She hummed softly, a tune her own mother used to sing long ago, before sickness and poverty took her too. The sound surprised her, but it calmed the baby further, his breathing evening out as his head nestled under her chin. "I'll do what I can," Clara finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I can't promise miracles." The cowboy exhaled shakily, relief washing over his face. "I'm not asking for miracles," he replied. "Just one chance." As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Clara held the baby closer, unaware that this single moment, born of desperation and kindness, was already changing everything she thought she knew about herself. Morning crept into the shack slowly, pale light slipping through the cracks in the wooden walls. Clara had not slept. She sat in the same chair by the fire, stiff and sore, yet unwilling to move. The baby lay against her, warm now, his tiny chest rising and falling with soft, steady breaths. Every so often he made a small sound, and each time Clara's heart leapt as if it were her own child calling to her. She brushed her fingers gently over his back, amazed at how natural the motion felt. The cowboy had dozed on the floor near the hearth, his coat pulled around him. At the sound of the baby stirring, he woke with a start and scrambled to his feet. "Is he?" he began, fear flashing across his face. Clara nodded quickly. "He's calmer," she said softly. "He slept most of the night." The cowboy's shoulders sagged with relief, and he pressed his palm over his eyes, whispering a quiet prayer of thanks. As the baby fussed again, Clara adjusted him. Instinctively, murmuring soothing sounds. He latched on clumsily, then more surely, and Clara's breath caught. She had worried all night that her body would fail her, that she wouldn't be enough. Yet here he was, feeding, the tension easing from his tiny frame. Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from the overwhelming realization that she could give something precious after all. The cowboy turned away, giving her privacy, but she could see his reflection in the small mirror by the wall. His jaw was tight, his expression torn between gratitude and guilt. "I never meant to put this on you," he said quietly. "Folks talk. They're cruel." Clara gave a small, sad smile. "They always have been," she replied. "But this isn't about them." She looked down at the baby, whose hand rested against her chest, fingers splayed as if claiming safety. "It's about him." Later, Clara prepared thin porridge from what little she had, eating with one hand while holding the baby with the other. The cowboy insisted on chopping wood and fixing the loose shutter as payment, though she hadn't asked. As the day went on, neighbors passed by, casting curious glances. Word traveled fast in Dustwater Creek, and whispers followed. Some looked shocked, others judgmental, but none dared say anything outright when they saw the baby quiet and content in her arms. In the afternoon, the baby grew fussy again, his cries sharper. Panic flickered in the cowboy's eyes, but Clara remained calm, rocking and humming until he settled. "You're good at this," the cowboy said, awe in his voice. Clara shook her head. "I'm just listening to him," she answered. Yet deep inside, something new was taking root, a sense of purpose she had never known. As evening approached, Clara felt exhaustion wash over her, heavy but satisfying. The baby slept peacefully against her once more, stronger than he had been the night before. The cowboy watched them, a strange hope kindling in his chest. He had come begging for one desperate act of kindness. He was beginning to see that what he'd found was something far greater, something that neither of them was ready to name yet, but both could feel growing with every passing hour. The third night settled over Dustwater Creek with a quiet that felt different, gentler. Clara sat near the window this time, the baby bundled against her as she watched the stars emerge one by one. He was stronger now, his cries louder when he wanted comfort, his eyes beginning to open in brief, curious glances. Each small change filled Clara with a mixture of joy and fear, joy that he was thriving, fear that this borrowed closeness could not last forever. The cowboy, whose name she had finally learned was Eli, stood beside her, shifting his weight as if searching for the right words. "The doctor came by today," he said softly. "Says the boy's turning a corner." Asked who'd been feeding him. Clara felt her cheeks warm. "What did you tell him?" she asked. Eli smiled faintly. "I told him the truth. That an angel in an old shack saved my son." Clara laughed quietly, shaking her head. "I'm no angel," she murmured. "Just a woman who said yes." Outside, the town was changing too. Fewer whispers followed Clara when she walked to fetch water. Some women nodded to her, awkward but respectful. One even left a basket of bread by her door without a word. Clara noticed these things but said nothing, afraid that speaking of them might break the fragile peace. All she cared about was the baby's steady breathing, the way he relaxed completely when she held him. That night, Eli sat across from her, his voice low and raw. "I can't do this alone," he admitted. "I tried, I really did, but every time I look at him, I see Mary, and I freeze." You gave him a chance." Clara looked at the fire. Her heart pounding, she had known this moment would come, the moment when kindness demanded an answer. "I can help," she said carefully. "For now, until you find another way." Eli shook his head. "I don't want another way," he said, meeting her eyes. "I want a home for him. And for you too, if you'd consider it." The words hung heavy in the air. Clara's first instinct was to refuse, to protect herself from disappointment. She had been overlooked her whole life, hope felt dangerous. But then the baby stirred, his tiny hand curling around her finger, grounding her in the present. "I don't know what the town would say," she whispered. Eli smiled gently. "For once, I don't care." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of the fire. Clara closed her eyes, thinking of the loneliness she had carried for so long, of the way her shack had echoed with emptiness. She thought of Mary, of promises unspoken, of second chances. Slowly, she nodded, not because she was certain, but because she was brave enough to try. Eli's breath caught, and he stood, tipping his hat in a gesture of deep respect. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Clara pulled the baby closer, feeling his warmth, his life, his trust. In that quiet room, under a sky full of stars, Clara understood something at last. She had never been too much, never unworthy. She had simply been waiting for the moment when love needed her exactly as she was.